Hi everybody, Courtney here today to talk to you about being middle-aged or even older and not being prepared for retirement. These principles are going to be the same for whether you're 40, 50, 60, 70, or even younger. If you will follow these, you will learn so much. So the first thing I want to start out with is if you like this content, and I know I'm just a talking head here, I don't have any fancy videos. I hope to be able to do that in the future. It's one of my goals this year is to learn more about video production. But at this time, I'm just trying to give you good sound content and information to help you improve your personal finance life, which will improve the overall quality of your life. So if you like this content, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. It really helps this information get out there to other people. And I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so first we're going to talk about, let's say that you are middle-aged, somewhere between 40 and 60, and you are in debt still, or you do not have enough saved for retirement, if any. What do you do? And so I'm going to go through some different steps with you and some things that you can do. I have helped many people do this, and I don't do this for a living, though I do enjoy it, and someday I might do it for a living. But right now I have a good job as a medical yoga therapist, and this is a passion and a hobby of mine, and I help people all the time, and I've seen great success with myself as well. So you're in debt, and I know many people that are, and you've got little to no money. What do you do? The first thing you need to do is you need to stop getting in debt. So you need to stop using your credit cards, you need to stop taking out car loans, and you always want to consider that when you're taking out a loan, we only want to borrow money, if we borrow money at all, on appreciating assets. So other than a house, the only thing that you could say would be an appreciating asset, and this is a kind of a sketchy subject, would be an education. And in this day and age, with the cost of schooling getting to be so expensive, I would say that that can be very dependent on what you choose to do. For instance, I know one lady right now who's working in a field, she's probably making, I don't know, somewhere between $10 and $15 an hour. There's a program here where you can go to school for free to learn to be a medical assistant, or a pharmacy assistant, which pays between $15 and $18 an hour. Now, in a case like that, it might be worth it. Or if you want to be a medical assistant, you're making $10 an hour and you're only going to pay a couple of $1,000s. The return on that investment would be worth it. So just quickly, let's just say that those are the only kinds of debts you really want to consider. Other than that, the main place where people get in trouble is on these four areas, all right? Housing, auto, food, and discretionary spending. And let's go through what we need to look at in each of those areas. But first, I want to tell you that if you're watching this video, I know people say this and it's kind of poo-pooed and put to the side, but the most important thing you can look at is what is your why. And I want to give you some examples. So both of my parents were making variable incomes. They're not married, have not been married most of my life, between say $60,000 and $100,000 a year. What a lot of people don't know, and so I'm going to use real numbers. My husband makes around $90,000 a year right now, and yes, that's high, but that's only been in the past couple of years. Before that, if you watch other videos, you know that we were fairly broke when we met about 8 years ago. And so I just looked at his Social Security. He is 61. If he takes Social Security at 62, his income would only be $1,100, and he would be limited to how much money he could make if he took it. I think it's $17,000, $18,000 a year. So only $1,000, $12,000 a year income versus his $89,000 he's making now. And that's working 2 jobs. If he waits till he's 66.8, which is the full retirement age. A lot of people misunderstand that they think 65 is the full retirement age. This is not true. That is only for your Medicare. That's when you can qualify for Medicare. So if he waits to 66.8, he would draw $1,600 a month. If he earns $89,000 for 3 years. They look at your 3 highest years, is my understanding. If he waits till he's 70 to take Social Security, he's going to get $2,400 a month. The more you make, the more your Social Security will be. If you're a woman or you are the spouse that earns less and you have been married for at least 10 years, you can draw off your spouse's income or Social Security as to the amount. So for instance, I was married for 20 years to someone else. If he was making $100,000 when it got time for me to retire, I could either look at his number or my current husband's number and take the higher. It's going to be half of what they make, I believe. It's somewhere like that. So those are some things to consider. So if you're a high earner and you're making $50,000 to $100,000 a year right now and you're not saving for retirement, you need to understand that you're going to go from making maybe $5,000 to $10,000 a month to only having a couple of $1,000s a month. And that is not a lot of money. And a lot of people just don't do the math and think about that. And so it's very important that you understand your why. And for me, it's because I think about my future self. I've helped so many older people, including my mother, with her finances, that I know that when someone's used to making $60,000 a year and they go to making $24,000 a year, that is really hard if they are not prepared for it. So let's talk about each of these areas, and let's talk about what that looks like. With debt, with taking out debt, I have here a statement for my credit card. And this credit card is something I pay off monthly. I do not recommend people using credit cards who are already struggling to get out of debt, but I do credit card hack for travel, and I only recommend doing that after you are completely out of debt and you have developed really good habits with saving and spending. So this bill is $537, and if you look on your bill right here, I don't want to give too much information away, on the front page it will tell you if you pay only the minimum payment, this $537 over 19 months will cost you $636. So if I pay only the minimum, I've paid $100 to borrow $537. Now you say, that's not that much. No big deal. I can make $100 easy. Let's contrast that. I did the math on this. If you take that $100 and you put it in let's say you have a savings account right now of $1,000, and you take that $1,000, or you just take that $100 a month. Let's just say $100 a month. You start with $100 and then you put $35 in, because the calculator wouldn't let me do more than that. You do $35 a month for 2 years. You're going to make $500. That does not include the $100. You're going to make $500 on your 537. Okay, so you can either make 500 or spend 100. So you have to look at opportunity cost. And so a lot of times people are like, okay, I can afford this car payment. The average car payment now is $700 a month. So people think, well, I can afford that. That's my monthly budget allows me an extra $700 a month. But if that person is spending $700 a month and they're not investing it, then I'm going to tell you what that's going to look like. So the calculator only lets me start with like $1,000 down. So I included the $1,000 and then I added it at the end. So you start with $1,000 into an investment like BTSAX index funds with Vanguard. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. You can look it up and learn later. But you put $700 a month into that account for 10 years. Instead of making a $700 a month car payment, you put it into an account. And the average right now is about 9% return. It's going to fluctuate from 6 to 13, but let's use an average of 9. In 10 years, you will have spent $85,000. You will have $137,911 in 10 years. That is, you made $52,911 in income, like a whole year's income in 10 years. Here is the awesome part. Let's say you're 45, you want to retire at 65. Let's say instead of getting that new $700 a month car payment, and let's say you put $1,000 down on it to start, you took that money instead and you put it away for 20 years, you're going to have $473,000, $473,530 to be exact. You will have made $304,500, where on the other end you would have been paying interest. You actually would have paid them more than what you spend. If you keep a $700 car payment and you just kind of live your life like car payments are normal, then you would have only spent in that investment in 20 years, you would have spent $169,000, but you would have made $304,000 on that $169,000 on top of it. So if you look at how much income that would produce, there are some studies that show you can draw 4%. It's still going to grow because remember it's growing at 8 to 9%. Let's say you have $473,000 and you're going to take 4% off of that a year in income. That's going to give you an extra $18,920 a year to live on. Divide that by 12. That's an extra $1,576 a month. And let's say that you have your Social Security is $1,600, because let's say you're one of those 89,000, you're going to have $3,176 a month to live on instead of $1,600. And see, people just aren't thinking about this. In general, only a small percentage of Americans are thinking about this, and it's such an epidemic. So let's go a little bit deeper. I know that I don't want to keep this video over 20 minutes on housing. If your housing cost for your mortgage, your insurance, and your taxes or your rent should not be more than 25% of your income. And if you can get it lower, get it lower. My husband and I are substantially lower. I think our house payment, taxes, and insurance is about $1,450, and we're now around $100,000 in income every year, a little bit more than that. So we are way below 25%. If you can adjust your wants versus needs and find where you would feel comfortable and happy and content and work on contentment. Americans have this idea, HGTV has just killed Americans and Canadians in their outlook of what we need versus what we want. And sometimes we confuse wants with needs. So let's say that you're bringing home $5,000 a month or $4,000 a month, even after taxes and insurance. You don't want your housing expenses to be $1,000. So if you're renting, you could do $1,000. Or if you are buying, I would still do $1,000 with taxes and insurance. So you can still get a pretty nice house for that. And again, you just have to look at your wants versus your needs. With the automobile, it's about the same thing. So you want to get your automobile, I have had payments. I have chosen to have payments at one time. Right now, we have no payments. Actually, I just took my son's car back because he moved to a city and he didn't need it. And I sold my car for $12,000. I purchased my car for $25,000 5 years ago. I just sold it for $12,000, which was a hit. And I will pay his car off, which is $6,000. And so I'm putting that money, the balance of that, into a money market where it's growing. And so I think, let me see what that's going to grow per year. So let's say I put $5,000 in because I'm going to give him a little bit of money for his car. 5,000 times 1.5. So I'm going to make $75 a year. That's not a lot, but it's a little bit. And I'm going to keep putting the amount of money. I'm going to put $700 a month into that. So within a year or two, I will have, so with $5,075 plus 700 times 12, that is $5,880. So $5,880 plus 5,075 is $10,955. If I wanted to buy an upgrade, I could go out and get a $10,000 car, and that would give me money for taxes. If I saved a little more, I could go out and then upgrade and get a nice used car within a year. So if you think about that, like, let's say you sell your car and you make 5,000 on it, and you've saved $700 times 12, 8,400. Yeah, my math must have been off earlier. I'm sorry. And you sell for 5,000. You've got 13,400 to buy a nice used car, so you can upgrade for cash. So driving, people think they need all of these things, but driving an economical, reliable, nice car, I would recommend. The top cars for holding value and for being easy to maintain are going to be Hondas and Toyotas. And there are also subsidiaries of that, like Acura and Lexus, are the higher end models. And I will tell you, I have 6 kids, and 5 of them drive used Acura, Lexus, Honda, and Toyota. All of their cars are over 20 years old, except for the Acura that I just took is 12 years old. They all, except for the Acura, they all have over 150,000 miles on them, and they're going strong. And we did not spend over $3,200 for any of them. And that is the only exception is the Acura. We spent $7,400, had a $1,500 trade-in, and it only had 86,000 miles on it. So you can find a really nice used car for $10,000 or even $5,000. You're not going to pay the taxes on it. You can have your insurance is cheap. Full coverage insurance on that Acura is $50 a month for me. And y'all, that is nothing. I mean, that is nothing. So just, you have to change your perspective. And my husband and I have a saying, and that saying that we say to each other when we're having a hard time, maybe it's tempting to upgrade, because y'all, I would qualify for a brand new Mercedes-Benz. I could go out and buy a Land Rover today if I wanted to. I would totally qualify. We make enough money. We don't have the debt to income. I could be driving a $60,000 car. Here's the saying, and remember this: I would rather be rich than look rich. I would rather be a Judd Clampett than someone who had all of these fancy things and I don't have any money, because that will catch up with you eventually. So you might have to move. I sold a house that my ex-husband and I built, and we purchased a house that was half the cost, and the relief far outweighed me moving from my fancy house to a house that needed a lot of remodeling and was very out of date. The relief was so big that I never regretted it. Going from my 5-year-old car to this 12-year-old car, I thought it would be hard. It hasn't been hard at all. So don't always think it's going to be worse. Sometimes not having the financial burden makes it easier. The other areas where people really can make big changes today, and I will say I struggle in the food area, and that is because of I grew up with some food struggles, and I had for years, up until I was 40, I had a very small food budget and I made it work. And now I eat a very restrictive plant-based diet. And so sometimes that can get pricey, but it doesn't have to be. People can really save money on their food and their discretionary spending. There's so much information on the internet with food and how to eat cheap, and people, just staying away from boxed foods. If you eat meat, eating the cheaper cuts of meat. If you don't eat meat, using lentils and beans and rice. I don't eat potatoes, white flour, white rice, or sugar. If I did eat those things, it would be cheaper to eat. If you're trying to maintain your weight, those things can put weight on you. But eating pasta, brown rice, whole grain pasta, whole wheat flour, those things are good protein sources. If you're gluten-free, then you can go to the gluten-free stuff. And so there are ways to cut your expenses. You just have to get crafty. And so I would say start studying on how to cut your food expenses. Start looking up information. There's so much on the internet. The last one is discretionary spending. The best way I know to cut this is my husband and I give ourselves an allowance. Excuse me. When I was younger, it was like $25 a week, and sometimes I didn't even have that. Now for my husband and I, it's $350 a month. And how does that look? Well, for us, if my husband wants to go buy a jacket, or I want to go buy some clothes, or I want to go get my nails done, that comes out of that. If I want to go out to eat with my friends, if we do something as a family, I pay for it as a family. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here. I hope this helps you and you can get some savings going today. Get out of debt, save, 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 and you'll be okay. Bye-bye.